Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Block A TCG. And today I have a special video, guys, because I am doing another deck profile video for you all. And this deck profile is very special to me because it is one of my favorite decks I've ever played in One Piece. And it is one of my most successful decks that I've played thus far, and that is Crocodile. So I have both the original and the super pre-release Crocodile that I got recently from a trade. But this deck has won me two of my local tournaments within the last month or so. I've won two tournaments playing Crocodile. I finished second in one of my store championships. I finished sixth in another one. I think in total, if we're going to talk about all the games I've played with this in the last month or so, I've played about 13 matches and I've only lost 3 matchups the entire month. This is one of my favorite decks of all time and just a all-around great deck. Blue has become one of my favorite deck callers to play in One Piece. But so to start off with, I want to talk about the leader. So Crocodile himself, he is sort of purple in a way because of his ability, but you have to -4 Dawn from your Dawn deck, or from your Dawn to your Dawn deck. And if you do so, you can return a 5 cost to your opponent's hand. So most times you want a leader that's going to be able to do its effect every turn if possible. But Crocodile is a leader where you're going to use him when it matters. I usually don't use his -4 unless I have to do so. And if the situation requires me to do so. Typically in game, I'm going to be doing a lot of finagling with my cards to basically remove as much from my opponent's field as possible when they have a lot of defense. One of the store championship matches I had with a friend of mine when she was playing her Doflamingo blue, I was able to remove 3 of her blockers during that matchup because of him, Red Rock, and 2 Red Rocks and this, and basically was able to remove an entire field of blockers in just one go. And then swing a bunch of times 9k with my other cards. But that is what the leader does. So let's go ahead and put him over to the side. And we're going to go through the pieces of this deck that fit what it's supposed to be doing. I'm going to kind of give you guys an explanation of why I do the things that I do with this deck and showcase off all the cards. So to start off with, I'm going to go ahead and start with one of the main engines of this deck, and that is the Camaru build. So Camaru, if you are not aware, which you should be, but Camaru is a 3-cost character that on play, if I have 1 Dawn on him, I can rest up to 2 of my Dawn to then look through my deck and play a Pacifista. He is one of the only cards in the deck right now, or in the card game, that allows you to search through your deck and get something you want out. There's not a lot of searching in One Piece. You know, there is some setup of like your top 5, stuff like that. There's some searchers that you can search through your deck and grab a card from the top 5. But this one actually lets me go through the entire deck, grab a card. And something that's beneficial for this is that I can start looking through life and get an idea of what's, or I can look through my deck and get an idea of what's in life and kind of prepare for what I'm going to be seeing. So, for example, if I do the search and I realize that some of my Pacifistas are not searchable, then that means they're in my life, and that, you know, kind of helps me know how many times I can actually use the ability. So I run 4 of this because as much as I possibly can, I want this in hand on my first turn. Now, I will not always play this on my 3 Dawn turn or 4 Dawn turn. I will sometimes hold this off until I've got 6 Dawn, so I can kind of just play this on top of one of my other Pacifistas. I want to kind of get the most value out of it. Depending on your matchup, if you're playing against black, blue, you know, something like that, you may see this card get destroyed really quickly, and you don't want to do that. You know, green can also rest it. So you want to be cautious of putting this out too early because it's going to be a target immediately. But that is the the Camaru. And so for that engine, I run 3 Pacifistas, the 6k attacker, and I run 2 of the Pacifista blockers. So I don't want my entire strategy to be just about this. Now, this is one of my main things I want to do, obviously, but it's not my main priority. The main priority is to get this engine working for me the best I can, swarm the field if I can get some blockers out, some attackers, and then kind of build up my board for what I need it to do. But I'm not dependent on this. This is not something that I have to be dependent on entirely, and I can just use it when I need to. Sometimes I won't even warrant needing to do so, but one of my first early games is wanting to get the Centaur out and then get me some Pacifistas out there to do some stuff that I needed to do. So that is the Centaur engine that I run in this deck. Then next, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the blockers I run. So this is something I actually have not, I've run only one time. I've not ran this in a few of my tournaments that I've won. And in replacement of this, I was running the Ultis, which was a 3-cost character that if you put 1 Dawn on him and you or on her and you swing, you can return a 2 cost to the bottom of your deck. And the reason I was running that card was I was playing a lot of red recently, and it was very helpful to have that card to just be a threat on board to remove those 2-cost characters and blockers and stuff like that. But because of red being kind of not the meta right now, and my locals don't really play as much red, I decided to go with the Boa Hancock because of her draw ability. Get her on the field, and I can use her as attacker or blocker. And if I do so and I have 5 cards in hand, I can start using the draw power. And that draw power is too nice to ignore. So that's why I decided to put these in as my tech choice over the ulti for right now. And then I run 4 of the Miss All Sundays. This is one of my most important blockers. In my honest opinion, this is probably one of the best cards in the deck because of how much this card saves me. I put this on the board and she's not going to stay there long because she's a 1K. I could easily lose this to plenty of destructive cards in red, or yellow has its own, but there's a lot of ways that this can get KO'd on the board, but that's okay because her purpose is to get on the board and bring back some events from my graveyard. So sometimes I will hold her off from being played until I get some events out on the board and used, so that way I can recycle them. And 3000 Worlds is going to be your favorite card in this deck, and so will Red Rock. So you're going to want to keep this in mind, being able to get those back. And then I also run 4 of the Don Quixote do Flamingo blockers. This card is a must-have in the deck because I get to search the top 5 and I can kind of stack my next 5 cards to benefit me in the best way. And I can kind of plan ahead of time of what I want to do. Let's say when I do lay this out in my first 5 cards, I get like a 9-drop Mihawk and a few other cards. So I don't want to draw Mihawk yet if I'm not at that Dawn point. So what I might do is I might put him a little later on to where I'll draw him the turn I'm going to play him instead of him being a dead card in hand sooner. So I do play this a lot, and sometimes if the top 5 cards I'm getting are just not what I want to see, I'll just bottom deck them, so that way I can take the risk of getting something else if those next 5 cards are just not what I need right now. So in total, if you include my 2 Pacifista blockers, I am running a total of 12 blockers in this deck, which is, I think, honestly great because you want to have as much defensive power early game and prepare to use these for late game purposes, and then stack your board with some great attackers. But I love the blockers in this deck. I think they are just very effective, and the Boa Hancock I think is going to be a kind of mid-range attack and blocker for me. And then before we get into the major stuff that I think is important about this deck, I want to go ahead and go over the 2K counters. So I do run 2 of the Alvida 2K counters. She is not just a 2K counter for me at times. She is playable on field to do some stuff as well. If you have a Dawn on her and you attack, you can actually trash a card from your hand and you can return I think it's a 3, one of your opponent's 3 or less cards to their hand. So I have used this a few times on board and have done some stuff with her. If I don't have anything else and I know that I need to do some more aggression early on, I may just go ahead and play her next turn, put some Dawn on her, and then just start going for it. And it's been useful at times. I've been able to remove some small blockers on board like Chopper and stuff like that. So not every time I'm going to play her and use her for that, but if I can, I'm going to. I also run 4 of the Sasakis. So I'm going to be honest, this card has been multi-purposeful for me because I was able to use this card a couple of times in tournaments where I draw him early game and my hand is just dead. So I will play him on board, I'll put all my cards back in my deck, and I'll shuffle and get a new hand. And that has saved me so many times when I've had bad hands from the original hand and then mulligan, and that hand's just as bad. So this is kind of like a third mulligan, if you will, early game. Pretty much after a certain point, I'm not going to use this, but if I first turn, if I have him in hand and I'm on 3 Dawn turn and I just need something, I'm going to go for it. Plus he's 4k and I could easily ramp him up to 5 and do some damage. And then of course the other 4 2k counters is my Kayas. They are very helpful in drawing 2, trashing 2 if I need to. And I can also use some of my other cards to return these to hand if need be. I can also, there's no rule against sending them back to my hand myself if I want to. But I run 10 total 2k counters. I obviously could run 2 more Alvidas and run a total of 12. But at this point in time, I just don't feel like there's any room to do so. All right, and now let's get on to the big boys of this deck. So to start off with, we do run 2 of the 10-drop Kaidos. So Kaido is one of the most important. So the whole purpose of my build of Crocodile is pure removal. My whole purpose throughout this entire matchups that I ever get is removal. Now, this deck has a lot of aggression. I can go really hard and hit hard with a lot of the cards in this deck, but I'm going to be focusing a lot on just resource management on my opponent's field. I want to play as much as I can, remove a lot of what my opponent's doing, and just keep them from really doing anything. Most matchups, I'm going to make my opponent have to literally waste their resources by using Dawn Up to play cards that are just going to not make it the next turn. And with Kaido, this is one that I've used this and this and sequence together. Like I'll play this, remove an 8-drop or less and a 3-drop or less, and sometimes I'll just pick 2 blockers if I can, a 3 and a 4 or 5 blocker. What it depends on what I'm playing against. And then I'll send them both to hand and then use this to return the 3rd blocker. I've completely removed an entire field of blockers doing these 2 together multiple times, and it's just nice. Plus, if your opponent's going to have to rather toss those cards for counter value or they're going to have to replay them again, and it gets annoying to have to replay cards like that. And then the other big boss for this, outside of the Kaidos, is I do run 4 of the Drakhel Mihawks. Mihawk is my favorite card in this deck, hands down. He is on play, removing a 7 cost or lower. When you're getting matched up against Big Mom, it takes out those 7-drop Big Moms that can be very beefy and hard to deal with. I mean, you still lose their take, give them that life, but you still can get it off board and keep them from having a big attacker on board. I've used this for the 7-drop Luffy's for the green-purple Doflamingo. There's just so much you can do with removal with this, and you're going to want to get these guys out as quickly as possible because they're so hard to deal with. When your opponent has a 9k and a 10k, a 12k character on board, they cannot deal with that kind of attack power, and it's just going to overwhelm them quickly. So as much as I can, I'm going to fill the field full of blockers, and I'm going to use these all to overwhelm my opponent damage-wise. I also run 2 of the Soja Kings. Soja King is a great so on curve, most times I'm going to, before I get to my non-Dawn, I'm going to be playing 7. So if I go first, I'm going to play my, whatever I need to go from 1, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 5, whatever. But when I usually get to 7, I'm going to go ahead and drop the Soja King. Or if I'm at 8, I'll drop the Soja King, remove a 6 cost, put it back to your hand, and then draw 2, trash 2. This gives me a chance if I have too many of him in my hand, I can trash 1 and get a different one. Different cards. It's just helpful to get some of the dead cards out of hand and just get some stuff you may need instead. Soja King is it is just amazing to have this on your curve of 7. And then speaking of the curve as well, I do run the 2 Zephs. So I debate on running 4 of the Soja Kings, but I decided against running 4 Soja Kings total because Zeph is just a nice early 5-drop character. I can remove a 3-cost blocker on the field on play. I don't have to use any of his trash 7 abilities, nothing. I literally can just play him, make you lose a 3 cost back to your hand. It could be a Brûlée, whatever you want to, select for that 3 cost to send back. And then you've got yourself a 6k on the board to deal with. So this is kind of my removal when it comes to characters. All of these cards right here are all about removal and getting things out of the field and just kind of doing that resource management. So this is the big boys of the group and a lot of the removal I have in the deck outside of events, of course. And then to finish up this deck profile, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the last thing that's important about this and probably the most important thing, and that's the events. So I do run 3 of the Dragon Twister Demolition Beams. So this is a card that I can give up to my... It's for counter value, obviously, when your opponent's attacking. I can give my character plus 4,000 or my leader plus 4,000, and then I can place one of my opponent's cost 1 or less cards to the bottom of their to the bottom of my owner's deck. So this is a nice card to have in hand if you need for counter value late game to survive some big hits and keep from losing too much life. This can remove a lot of, like, if you're playing against the green-red law, this can remove blockers. This can remove a lot of annoying, like, Bonnie and stuff like that they're using to ramp up their field and just kind of get some stuff out of hand. You can also use the trigger effect to return a cost of 6 or less to the owner's hand on trigger, which I have done a few times to get some stuff off board for the next turn. So either way, if you get this in trigger or if you get it in your hand to use for counter, it's just nice to have. And then, of course, one of the main cards of this deck, one that you cannot run less than 4 of, in my opinion, is the 3,000 Worlds. This card is a 4-cost card that allows me to remove one of my opponent's 5 or less characters and put it on the bottom of their deck. This right here, the one thing when people are playing blue that they hate to hear more than anything is bottom deck this. Because I do it a lot. And I bottom deck a lot of things. And the thing is, if you can do it correctly and you use the Miss All Sundays properly, you can continue to recycle so many 3,000 Worlds and continue to do so much annoying removal to your opponent. And 5 costs or lower is a lot of blockers. That's a lot of early game stuff, and you just continue to ruin their momentum and take away resources for late game. And then, of course, if need be, when your opponent wastes all that 10 Dawn to play whatever big character that they're trying to get on the board and do whatever they want to do, whether it's Kuzan or if it's Rush Shanks or whatever that person is planning on using it for, Gum Gum Red Rock is your friend. This also helps a lot when playing against the Rebeccas and trying to remove those Luffy's on board. This card selects and chooses whatever card you want to remove from the board. And if you get both these, you can use both these and your leader together to remove 3 cards from the field. 2 to the bottom deck, 1 to the hand. That is just insane removal. And that is why this deck is so nasty and why I love it so much. This deck is all about control, and you take over pretty much everything your opponent does. You try to control their field and pretty much annoy them to the point where they just don't want to play you anymore. And it becomes a very obnoxious thing to deal with. But that is my build of Crocodile Blue. It is my favorite deck currently that I am playing. I've been playing this for most of OP4, and I am enjoying this more than any of the OP4 leaders, in my honest opinion. And it's just right now my favorite deck to play. Crocodile is awesome, and again, I've won so many with him. But if you're looking to play this deck, by all means, give him a shot. He is really fun. If you are into control or trying to take control of the board, or if you just like having really cool combos that you can do with the deck, this deck is going to be for you. This is my favorite deck in One Piece so far, and I cannot wait to continue playing this deck and seeing ways I can improve it in the future with some of the stuff coming out in OP5 and OP6. But thank you guys for watching, and if you want to see the whole deck all the way laid out without me having to go through all this, go ahead and check it out right now, because as soon as I'm done, you will see the full deck right in front of you. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you all next time. All right, guys, and this is the entire deck right here laid out for you guys. All 51 cards in the deck, 50 in the deck, and 1 leader. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for watching this video and subscribing to the channel and checking out this deck profile of my winning Crocodile deck. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.